And we're back with Truth Unrestricted, the podcast that is creating and interpreting the language of the disinformation age. I'm Spencer, your host, back again today with Patrick. How are you doing, Patrick?
Good, Spencer. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Patrick, the man who once scared me half to death by hiding under some clothes, back with me again today
Yes.
for this. Once upon a time, several lifetimes ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the day that we became that would have been our stepbrothers are we best friends now moment.
Maybe
if I was
a
going to
little.
pick one moment, that might have been the one. Yeah. Yeah. So today we're gonna first I have to do a thank you for the person who wrote the intro and outro music that I now use. An old friend, his name is Jeff Powell. He has a website that I will find out where the link is, and it will be included in the show notes for every show from this point forward, as long as I use it. I want to make sure that's in there. And I didn't include it the first two times because I wasn't sure if he was okay using his name. Not everyone is, so I wanted to be sure that he wasn't available when I was about to do those episodes. So, yeah, that's where I got the music.
That's awesome.
The thank you goes out. Yeah, it's good to rely on old friends for things like this every once in a while. And also, if anyone has any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, or if they want to ask questions about the intro and outro music or whatever, you can send an email to truthunrestricted@gmail.com. And yeah, on we go. So I want to do a thing today. It might become a thing that I do regularly, or it might be a thing that I only do once. I don't know. I have no plan like that. No real set plan. But this is going to be called, I call this the anatomy of a grift. It's a sort of a thing where I look at something and I see something that seems to be different than what most people see. And why that is, you can dissect my brain later once I'm gone and find out maybe. But I've said on this podcast, I have said on this podcast that I think differently. This is one of the whole reasons why I'm here. And also I suspect one of the main reasons why occasionally I upset people. Because I think differently. I ask questions no one else would ask. It's been a thing my whole life. But I suffer from, or perhaps am gifted with, a thing that I call meta thinking, in which I'm not only authentically engaged with whatever it is, I'm also thinking about what is causing people to say the things they say. What are they trying to accomplish by saying it, everything else? And I'm doing this all the time, just constant. So, and that's what I saw when I saw this. I was looking at this from a pulled back, looking at it from a broader perspective thing, and I saw some things happening in this particular video, and it bothered me. It bothered me what was going on here, and why some people are like, some people see this sort of content and they cheer it. So this video isn't like. It isn't like going viral and making the rounds, right? It's not like, a video anyone's likely, I think, to have seen before. But I do need to do a little bit of setup.
Okay.
Just a little bit of, I don't know, loose background kind of thing. So you're probably aware of things that we loosely refer to as things like the G7 and like the G20, right? These sort of not real strict organizations, but they are groupings of countries that have similar in region, or similar in technology level, or whatever.
Or they collaborate.
Yes, the purpose is to increase the level of cooperation economically, to get more trade happening, and this sort of thing, which is also why sometimes it's a G8 and sometimes it's a G7, is because one of the members is not always playing fair and is sometimes excluded, like Rudolph. So, and of course that's Russia. So right now it's a G7, and I mean, and you know, they'll meet every year or every couple of years or whatever it is. I don't really keep close track of these, but I'm loosely aware of them, like most people are. That a big deal is made when those people are meeting, and it's always the leaders meeting. They're not sending like only the, you know, finance minister or like the trade ministers or whatever. The actual leaders are showing up, right? Which must take a lot of time and then, you know, security concerns and money and everything else, but they do it. So there's a reason why they do it, right? Like they say, you know, they are doing some level of what might be called business there, but they're not like trading. You know what I mean? Like the Prime Minister of Britain and the Prime Minister of Canada aren't getting together and like trading things, you know, shipping lumber one way and shipping, I don't know what Britain would send. I don't know, bands, I don't know, actors, I don't know what they export in Britain that we need, you know what I mean? But they're not like they're going and actually trading things like it's a trading board.
But when they trade, they also trade when opportunities arise, and the likelihood of an opportunity arising aligned with this meeting is very low.
The governments of these nations aren't doing the trading is kind of the idea. So why are they meeting? They're meeting, this whole thing is, the most important factor of it is the photo opportunities that arise. So, which is it makes it seem not important, except that it is really, really important. So the idea is that what you need is businesses and companies to do the trading. They're the ones who are generating the economic activity. They're the ones organizing. They have efforts. They're going to buy. They're going to use technology from this place. They're going to use raw goods from this place. They're going to, and the whole reason to have this cross-border trade is to increase the level of opportunities that are available for everyone everywhere on average, right? So if your region doesn't create enough coal, maybe another country has coal mines to spare, and they would produce more if they had someone to sell it to. So you're going to buy coal from that other country, and then with that coal, you're going to do whatever. You're going to make steel or whatever they use, coal power plants, whatever. And so this provides a average greater level, right? But again, the leaders of the G7 and the G20 aren't doing the trading. They're not going there and say, hey, we'll trade your coal for that, you know, these you know, finely made cameras or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
No, that's way too granular.
Of course not, right? Yeah. But companies that are going to work in this way need to have some level of trust that the governments of these other nations that you might, you know, look to for buying goods from, that the governments of these nations are going to be cooperative, that you might, they might have, you know, be willing to not, you know, they're not going to put up too many tariffs. They're not going to be unfair practices. They're not, you know, and a lot of that trust will come from generally people just seeing the leaders in photos at the G7, smiling, getting along, all of that stuff. That's all. That's
like proof of life for international
sort of
relations.
Yes, for international trust. Yes, it is. It's sort of it gives everyone sort of this goodwill that in the future, if they go to try to generate those opportunities, they will be worth pursuing.
Yeah, there's a channel as well, right?
Right. And so there aren't necessarily like hammered out trade deals between these nations. There are between some of them, but not between all of them. But they might still get the idea that, you know, well, if I need some very specific thing and I can't find it anywhere in the region I'm in, I might broaden my scope and look in France, Germany, Italy, or whatever, right? Like there might be another place where they make the specific thing you're looking for, and then you don't have to like make it yourself in order to do whatever business you're doing. You can just buy it from there, ship it in.
Yeah, you gain an advantage.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the whole point, right? So, but in the same way, like these, because they are, because leaders of this are now being, seen in these pictures, and they are doing this thing that it is just a shallow thing they're doing. They're not doing a great deal of like hard business. They might talk about tariffs. They might talk about a few little things, but all of those things could be hammered out by telecommunications methods. Like they could all get Zoom call, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They don't need to all go and risk themselves on the security, all that stuff in order to be in the same room. They could just do all this over Zoom now, but they don't. They still want to appear because the purpose is to show everyone that they get along, that if there's a new prime minister in Britain, that guy still is on board with all the things the G7 are doing, and they want to be involved in all of that economic activity, right? So, and that's the whole point. That's a big part of the point. It's not the whole point. It's a big part of what they're doing there is
but the physical meeting interest. Aspect.
Yeah,
like you said, they could teleconference it if they needed to. But
because they're meeting like that, it leads people who are of the conspiratorial stance to think, oh man, they're just all in it together, aren't they? Like, you get that frown on your face, but this is a thing that crosses people's minds who are more cynical, who imagine that there's a global elite that are working together to do something nefarious that's undefined usually.
They can never define the line in the sand where there's some sort of acceptable cooperation. Right. The fact that anybody appears to be cooperating at all is suggestive of greater monsters to them.
Right. Which would imply, why aren't they doing that in a Zoom call rather than in a personal meeting? Right.
Because they turn into lizards when they're alone together.
It's the only way they can exchange long protein strings. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Like. So I started with G7, G20 because we're going to go straight to the WEF. So the WEF, the World Economic Forum, is it's not the G7. It's not the G20. In fact, a great number of world leaders are invited. Not all of them show. Some of them are more likely to show when there's an important thing to do or to say or to, have happen or whatever. Some of them just send their ministers. So it's less of a big deal to like be there. Right. And it's slowly gaining in some kind of momentum, but some people rightfully ask, what is this organization doing? What is it? It's not the same thing as the G7 and G20. It's not even the same thing as like the EU or other sort of subsections of like economic cooperation groups and this sort of thing. And a big thing that the WF is doing is something very similar to what's happening with the G7 and G20, in that it is something extremely shallow. It is it makes a lot of claims about encouraging companies to do things in a more respectful way. But it doesn't really have any enforcement mechanism. It doesn't have any way to drum people out. In fact, it doesn't even seem to disinvite anyone who isn't playing along totally. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't. It's sort of like a country club where everyone says, hey, we made it to this country club, like, but we're all still going to be cool with all the, plumbers and the electricians and the common folk who couldn't make it here, right? Like we're still part of a community that includes them, wink, wink, but we're going to have great time playing golf right now, like, and doing whatever else we do at this country club. All those other schlubs couldn't make it, but, we're going to make sure that the world is good and can, house them and all the rest of it. So they'll have they will they'll take things like climate agreements and they'll say that, yeah, we do want to do these climate agreements, but they don't really do anything to make it happen. It's just sort of soft encouragement.
It's like culture building, right?
Yeah, but it's also greenwashing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
so
that is a culture thing, though. Like greenwashing is something that happens in a culture that either permits or embraces it, right? But ideally, even if there's not like an enforcement mechanism, the culture will tend to, expel or evict members that don't hold the same values as the majority of the culture.
Right, but I've yet to hear of anyone being expelled or evicted or non-invited to the WF.
It's not a formal thing, though. It's right. Where those people will stop feeling comfortable showing up, knowing that this is the prevailing culture and I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, if greenwashing is happening now, it's because it happened before, and by and large, they must have accepted it, or they must have said that's good enough, or there's often these trade-offs. But to whatever degree the greenwashing occurs, any organization like that doesn't have a policy structure is relying only on the culture that, if we share the same values, we should, relatively speaking, arrive at the same outcomes.
Yeah, right. One factor that factors in is that when you have, say, environmental concerns or climate concerns and this sort of thing, and you're a company, let's say you're a company that operates internationally, and you are experiencing some pressure to make sure that all your operations internationally in all the various places are meeting, standards or whatever it is. You might rightfully say that this costs me money. But I want to make sure that my competitors are also doing that if I'm going to do it, because otherwise they get an advantage over me by not participating in volunteering to follow those standards. And that's a ongoing sort of problem with getting businesses on board for things like climate. But overall, I think what the WEF would like is to create the environment that I would call it the environment that Bill Clinton wanted, which is self-regulation for companies to do everything. That's really what he wanted, self-regulation. He didn't really want the government to regulate things, really, especially things like environment stuff.
That's assuming alignment with the regulation activity, right?
Well, he felt that maybe there would be, he imagined, I think, that there would be, public pressure or whatever, but it was more about stoking the economy than anything else. And he had an EPA, but they didn't, and they did some things. He wasn't like totally hands off, but I think what he had for that was still a measure of public pressure. If he had just his way, I don't think he would have had any EPA, because he was a guy who just wanted the fire to burn. He wanted the furnace of the economy to just go as strongly as possible, and he got it going pretty strong. Like, the Clinton years are still probably the best economic years for the U.S. in my lifetime, anyway. But yeah, it's more like a facade, like a show of this, and what should really happen is, in the minds of a lot of these people, is that the environment should get taken care of, not by some kind of government monster that comes in and demands it be so, but that you find a way for companies to just get on board, which is kind of a nice dream. But if they don't want to get on board and there's no way to make them, like it's a big shrug. Like what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. And of course, there's the ongoing factor of if you have one person in charge of, say, a company, let's call it a big company like Exxon, the biggest oil company in the world right now, ExxonMobil. If you have someone who's in charge of ExxonMobil who wants to meet, certain regulations or whatever for environmental stuff, and then he retires, and then another guy takes over, you have to rely then on the next guy also wanting to maintain that same level. But if that guy doesn't, it says, you know what? This is some bullshit. We can make a lot more money if we didn't spend all this money meeting all these standards, which is more or less where most like pure capitalists get to. Like, why do we want to waste all this money doing all these things when that's money we could just put into profit? Like, it's so much easier to make, we're not here to produce oil. We're here to make money. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot easier to do that if you don't put any effort into all that environmental stuff that there's, in their ideal, no government agency making them do. So
compliance is costly.
Right. So with that set up, we're going to listen to this. We're gonna watch a video. It's only 10 minutes. I'll be stopping at several points to point out some things I'm noticing that show people what I'm seeing when I see it. And it is about the WF and climate, and there's a bunch of other things in there that are related to what I set up already. So I don't want to get too far into it. Everyone can hear as we go. So let's get started here. Here we go.
Desiree Fixler, tell me, you are a WEF whistleblower. What is the WEF? For people, imagine you're explaining this to a sausage dog.
So we're not far into this, right? But the first thing I noticed, first of all, this is an expensive studio set.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is just a podcast. This guy is just doing a podcast. It's on YouTube and whatever podcast platforms he's on or whatever. I think this man's name is Andrew Gold. He's obviously British. You heard his accent. I have heard of Andrew Gold, but only because I listen to other podcasts and sometimes I hear advertisements for his podcast. So it's heavily promoted. He spends a lot of money on advertisements for his podcast. And I always get suspicious of that. The big podcasts that I listen to don't need advertisements on other podcasts. Uh-huh. And I always think, like, in the meta perspective of this, when I used to watch TV, I don't really watch TV much anymore, but when I used to watch TV and there would be a television show that was popular, and then often on that television show would be ads for other television shows. When I saw that, it told me that this was the show that the network thinks people are watching, and then they want to encourage the people watching this show to watch all their other shows. Like, they would, if they wanted to make money, they would put an ad for, I don't know, shampoo or whatever. But they're not putting an ad for shampoo. They're putting an ad for the show that comes on the next night. Mm-hmm. And then Wednesday night, Thursday night, etc.
Well, they're reinvesting their time resources to do that.
Right. So you're not, so if you have a podcast in which you're hoping to, I don't know, show it to enough people that you can make money on YouTube or whatever, but then you're also paying to advertise that podcast everywhere, like, that's, it might still be a good podcast, but it's probably not as good as the one that doesn't need any ads.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been my thought when I saw that on TV, and also when I saw it here. Like, I've heard Andrew Gold's name before because he heavily promotes his podcast by paying for ads.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he also spends a lot of money on a very nice studio and a set in that studio. Like, this is this looks like a piano bar in a very quiet pub. Like, not even a pub, like an upscale thing. Like, that's what it looks like. It's got nice lights in it. It's well lit. It's I mean, this is really professionally done. He must have a crew doing stuff here. Like, I don't have a crew. You are the closest thing I have to a crew, and you just show up once a week and let me talk at you. I mean, that's and there's no money, but yeah. So already, like, this is meant to have a certain aesthetic, is meant to have a certain look.
It's very produced.
Very, very, very produced. So here we go. Let's hear about the WEF.
So the WEF, or I call it the WEF, is a think tank, right? And it has an annual meeting that's very famous in Davos, which is happening right now. And the world's elite fly in, and you're talking about elite from business, government, academia, are all coming in to discuss the world's challenges. What are the problems? What are the solutions? And of course, the WEF puts out a risk report, and they have an agenda.
Okay, so far we have the world's elite, and they're from all the major three. They're from government and business and academia, and they have an agenda. So already we have the building blocks of a story that leads to, and they're not going to say the word, I'll spoil it for everyone. They're not going to say the word Illuminati, but these are the building blocks of Illuminati. Like, this is when you hear about, there's a meeting of the elite that are going to rule the world. These are the building blocks for that. I mean, there's other groups that are said to be the building blocks of this. The Bilderberg Group is another one that's often mentioned as some shadowy meeting of some kind where people are doing things, and because you don't know exactly all the things they're doing when they're meeting in this way, they could be up to anything in there when they're meeting in this way, and all kinds of people are attending these meetings that are very influential meeting, and they have an agenda, always an agenda.
Well, aside from the elites, she's basically just described meetings in general.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So it's just they have an agenda. It's the way she
silly
says it.
To show up for one of these things and they didn't know what they were ever going to talk about.
Right.
One wonders why anyone would show. Yeah. So we'll carry on.
Okay.
Oh. That's the key right there. I should have paused it there. Sorry. The global elite. So she's one step from the really dirty word is globalist. But global elite is one step shy from globalist. I need to do an episode on just the word globalist eventually. It's a fascinating word, the way that it's used in both in both common language and also in conspiratorial language. The way it has these sort of dual thing here. But global elite is right nestled up next to globalist, right? For people in the conspiracy world, they're synonymous. Oh, and by the way, I should mention too many people in the conspiracy world, globalist is Jews. It's Jewish people, right? It's the I mean,
I haven't encountered this term. I haven't encountered anyone trying to use it.
No, well, I mean, you don't listen to any Alex Jones,
That's
right?
true.
I don't think you listen to Knowledge Fight, which would lead you to listen to Alex Jones on Knowledge Fight. But this is pointed out not just from them, but in many other forms. Globalist is almost a directly synonymous thing for Jewish cabal, meeting to, subvert something or other that's not in your interest, right? At the bottom layer, it's almost always an anti-Semitic sort of thing, that the Jews with money are doing bad things and we need to stop them. But global elite is one step removed, but it's very, very close. And again, to the people who believe in conspiracy stuff, they are the same. So
is aligned to this agenda. So I would love to say it's an annual meeting that hashes things out, where people speak up, where there's debate, there are divergent views. No, for the global elite, it's an echo chamber.
Right. So we're stacking in here. It's not only that they have an agenda, they have some kind of plan, a scheme, a thing that they want to accomplish. They're not going there to debate anything.
They're not welcoming contrary positions.
No, they have it's their way or no way, right? But again, the WEF is not working anything out. They're just this is just soft encouragement. It's much more a place where people go to meet up with other people who are important that they don't always get a chance to run into. It's more like a conference. And the WEF is more than anything else greenwashing. So the fact that they're not accomplishing anything, like, they're not getting any feedback that's in any way negative or critical feedback, that's less a point of, like, they're not dictators so much as they're not really doing anything that's substantial enough to even be controversial in any way. Like, they're just there to encourage business to do things and say, yeah, but we're doing it the responsible way here. So, and that's more what they're doing. So the idea that it's some kind of a boogeyman because they don't have dissenting voices is not a very honest way to frame this, because what everyone wants there is just more business. Like, that's their overriding goal, and no one goes there wanting less business. Like, they're not inviting Greenpeace really to the WEF. I think they would love to invite Greenpeace, except that they know that Greenpeace will call them out. David Suzuki is not going to WEF. I should double check that, but I really doubt, the prominent people from the, environmental movements are showing up at the WEF. That's, yeah. Here we go.
It is all groupthink.
And what is that groupthink aimed towards?
Warm collectivism.
Okay, so warm collectivism. This is communism.
Oh.
This is what she's talking about. So these are business leaders. They're all capitalists, but they're there to do communism. This is what she's saying. It doesn't make any sense at all. But another thing I want to point out is that Andrew Gold doing this interview, at no point will he ask any tough questions. At no point will anything she says surprise him. At no point will he say, that's an interesting point. I'd like to hear more about that particular thing, or can you clarify that, or whatever. It's almost as though they're working from a script.
Yeah.
It's not really a script, I don't think, but it is a style of hosting that is not about conversationally finding something out as much as it is about assisting another person in saying the things they want to say.
Just prompting.
Yes, right. So we contrast perhaps directly with Joe Rogan. Almost all big podcasts of this kind where they're having conversation are compared to Joe Rogan at some point. I don't want to give Joe Rogan too many points, but in that, Joe Rogan does a better job of appearing like he's authentically engaged in learning something or conversing with someone. When in these situations, he sounds like he will pause a person in mid-thought and ask a clarifying question in between to try to seem like he's digging to learn something for himself.
Yeah, and he'll lift the hood on his own process.
Yeah, ish.
I think
there's a podcast
trying to work stuff out.
Right. All right. Okay. There's a podcast called the Know Rogan Experience, as in the KNOW, to know him. It was started by two podcasters that didn't really have any Joe Rogan experience until they started the podcast. And they go through this, like, if you listen to all of their episodes, they go through this and they even circle back to previous episodes and they kind of show that he learns a thing. He's like a goldfish kind of. He learns a thing and then later on forgets it and learns it again, or expresses the opposing view of a thing he previously learned the other way. So it's like he does feel like he's engaged in that moment as you're watching him, but then in a subsequent episode, it's like he's Bart Simpson and the whole universe resets and he goes and, never ages and the whole thing happens again.
I'll be honest, Spencer, sometimes I feel that way about myself. So.
Well, right, but you're not the world's most watched podcaster, right?
That's true.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, we'll let you go on this one, but perhaps we should, make some attempt at some point to hold Joe Rogan's feet to the fire just a little bit to be a little more consistent. But in that, though, he is better than what they're doing here, which is not even seeming to press on anything. What Andrew Gold is doing here is just facilitating the conversation, just prompting her to say more things, which is not the least bit useful at all for anyone. Okay, carrying on.
Basically, that which sounds like communism to me.
Oh, yes. Just like Mom Donnie just, said. It is the opposite, right? Didn't he say he criticized the frigidity of rugged individualism?
Yeah.
It's all about warm collectivism. So that is what the WEF is about. That surprises so many people because people.
Do you think Mom Donnie got an invitation to the WEF?
No.
Do you think they're really interested in getting Mom Donnie at the WEF to talk about?
No, I think she's just trying to dog whistle him because he's already been so
right now he's the poster boy for big scary communism inside America. Yeah. Because he's doing socialism.
So she's going for something that's accessible from the ground.
Right, in popular culture now and to right. But yeah, it's important to point out that she's doing what I call reality inversion here. She's attempting to reinterpret everything about the WEF to be synonymous with communism, where actually it's full capitalism going on in the WEF, and they just want a nice thin fresh coat of paint of environmentalist and climate awareness over top, and then just beyond that, on the inside of it, keep doing everything they're doing already, making all the money, right? That's really what the WF is. But she's trying to say it's like what Mom Donnie is, which even Mom Donnie isn't what she says he is. He's not full communist.
No.
Yeah. But carrying on.
Well, these big bankers and hedge fund guys and, heads of states from Western democracies, of course, are pro-capitalist. Today, and certainly after the WEF's Great Reset in 2020?
So in conspiracy culture, the Great Reset was a much talked about thing. It was the number one reason to talk about the WEF and the number one reason to vilify Klaus Schwab in the COVID conspiracy era. Are you familiar with the Great Reset as a concept?
Yeah, in general.
Right. It was originally an essay that was written by someone about a vision of the future that might be, closer to what Gene Roddenberry would have envisioned, about a sort of a world where you're not grubbing for every dollar at the very least, and perhaps willing to share some of the things you have in a community style. And that was turned by Klaus Schwab into a fairly short sort of a book that is probably more likely described as like a lengthy pamphlet than anything else. But our prime minister showed up at the WEF then and was so impressed by all these things that he ordered a copy and sent one to each of the premiers of Canada and encouraged them to read it. And everyone was talking about how Canada was going to do the Great Reset, or whatever that looked like, which was not, I mean, this is just it's just a potential thing that someone thought about as they were, dreaming about the world and what it could possibly be. A world that's maybe less frantic and less interested in using everything at the fastest pace it possibly could. But we're not in that world. We're not even close to it. Someone thought that during COVID, during a time when things were experiencing a hiccup anyway, that maybe we could, there might be a place for this. And of course, that was not really going to be true.
So remind me what the sinister element of the Great Reset was.
The sinister element is communism. The sinister element is the government deciding for you anything at all.
So the
always the
loss of freedom then.
It's back to our old friend / nemesis, the decision paranoia, right? Any decision that the government's making that you're not making is a decision you're losing, and a decision that they're making for you, and that they're controlling you just a little bit further in that way by any measure, as soon as they're making a decision that you don't have a part of. So, and that's been at the heart of a lot of these sort of notions. They're not described that way specifically, but it's always said with that sort of a beware the boogeyman voice, right? They're making the decisions for you. And that's meant to, they leave that there, and that's meant to be the meal that you eat, right? So yeah, that's carrying on.
The alignment is more towards socialism. So the WEF came out with a concept to reform capitalism. There's too much inequality in society. Capitalism, there's too much corruption and fraud. So we have a fix. We have something called stakeholder capitalism, where now, instead of companies and shareholders just focusing on the profitability of a company, we're going to blur the lines between government and business, and have businesses optimize for serving not just their shareholders, serving their customers, their employees, their community around them, but also serving the overall planet and all of society.
So are you familiar with stakeholder capitalism?
I don't think so.
So she's describing it as blurring the lines between government and business. But what it actually is exactly what the WEF does more than anything else, is attempt to give a reason for governments to not bother with regulations on companies. So stakeholder capitalism as an ideal, as a set of ideas, imagines a business venture as not merely occurring as just itself, as occurring inside a wider world that has not just employees, but also it has communities in which those employees live, and it has nations in which they live, in which they have environments. And so the idea is meant to be that again, it's meant to encourage companies to do their own environmental assessments and do their own record keeping on this stuff, and take care of their own interactions with the environment such that they don't poison waterways and this sort of thing. Do it themselves. And the quiet part is so that governments don't have to do it for them. Because the government will put in regulations when they're needed. Like if a mining company poisons a waterway, then a government needs to step in and say, we need to put in regulations that prevent a mining company from poisoning the waterway, because we are a nation. You know, the government is the people, and the nation that it's in, they're getting poisoned. The people need a solution to this problem. If the problem is caused by a mining company that's poisoned the waterway, the government needs to step in and do it. If the mining company won't do it themselves, the government needs to hold their feet to the fire. That's the purpose. So she says here that most of these a lot of these countries are moving towards socialism. That move towards socialism is happening because of the widening gap between the rich and the poor. If these are democracies, and they almost all are that she's mentioning, and more of the voters are on the poorer side of the spectrum, then they're going to want more ways to not drown, essentially, not just get washed out and become wage slaves, and where we're all just living on the land that's owned by 3 corporations. And so yeah, that includes socialism, that includes social safety nets, that includes free healthcare for all the nations except for one. That includes employment insurance for when you don't have a job. That includes all of these things, so that having momentary hiccups in the economy don't lead to foreclosures, right? That's what that means. And the widening gap between the rich and the poor is what drives socialist needs. Once life becomes too expensive for people and the people still vote, then they're going to want more ways to, It's not the WEF that's driving socialism. It's not a cabal of businesses and governments working together with academia to drive socialism. It's just the fact that more of our resources are going to like the top 3% of people.
Well, I mean, it's also, every country knows that if you have a strong population, then you're going to have stronger outputs and better GDP and better ability to produce and live, whatever life that they're trying to live. So it's
yeah. I mean, that's a good reason to have free healthcare,
or education, or whatever, right? Like the good of raising. It's like that whole, that the tide raises all boats or whatever. That's kind of the idea there, is that I want to live in a better society. And I know that if we only provide for some of us, the ones that are not provided for will encounter or become way bigger problems than I ever want to deal with on my own, right? That's why I want law enforcement. I don't want to have to deal with law enforcement off my back porch every time somebody decides they want something in my house.
Yeah. I mean, it's a better world if people don't need to steal just to live.
There's that too. Yeah. I mean, that's next stage stuff.
That's a preventative measure right there.
Mm-hmm.
People will steal. Some percentage of people will steal, but fewer will steal when they're not starving.
Mm-hmm.
That's a truism of people for all time.
Yeah. Theft for need should go down to 0, and it should be recreational theft only.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there'll always be some amount of recreational theft. That's a social problem. I don't know if we'll ever solve that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, carrying on.
So now it's not just about profit. Businesses have to blur that line. It's profit plus societal impact, profit plus purpose. And it is about setting an agenda that is centrally planned. So I'll give you an example.
Really shoehorning that concept in there. Centrally planned.
Mm-hmm.
It would only possibly be centrally planned if they were coming up with it at the WEF to like distribute it and tell everyone about it and say, this is your plan. We came up with it in the magical room behind the curtain here in Davos. Here is your here's the agenda. Carry on, carry forth, and do these things as we command.
Mm-hmm.
But as
it
should be
triggers
pointed
a
out,
certain type of person, right? When they hear that sort of thing, then they start to they get carried with the momentum of their own fears or worries.
Central planning is one of the key points of communism.
Mm-hmm.
As was, that's a thing that was written by Karl Marx in the original manifesto, was central planning. And it takes away all the choices from all the people and all the natural economic activity, and replaces it with government economic activity. And this is the big thing that takes away all the freedom, the central planning. But yeah, it's really shoehorned in here. She had to do a lot of jiggering just to get it wedged in there, just so, and it still doesn't really fit. Because none of the people who attend the conference in Davos got there because they had a history of following the leader. In fact, they all got there by not being the one who followed the leader. They're all leaders in their respective fields. The leaders of nations didn't get there by kowtowing and doing what it is. They got there by stepping on other people. The business leaders who got there not by duly bowing their heads and saying, yes, sir, I will do anything that you need. They got there by dog eat dog world, slitting throats, metaphorically speaking, right? Like doing what it took to get to the top. They're not showing up there then and then saying, okay, now that we did all that stuff just to get here, now I'm willing to just listen and do whatever the whoever's in charge of this thing tells me to do. It's not even in their nature. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. This is supposed to be like the coalesced will of self-interest. Yeah. So that they'd be so self-interested before they got to that room, and then they give up all that self-interest in favor of the WEF's agenda. It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, Jeff Bezos isn't going to show up here and say, oh, well, I guess now I got to change everything I had planned for one of the biggest companies in the world just because, it's not Klaus Schwab anymore. It's some other guy. But like, just because that guy says that, and who the hell is he? He doesn't run Amazon. He doesn't have a company nearly as big as Amazon. Screw that guy. I should be in charge of the WEF. That's what Jeff Bezos would say. If there's power here, I want the power. That's what they all would say when they got there. Mm-hmm.
So carrying on.
Example. It's like, we always hear about all of these climate zealots. Net zero. Net zero is part of the WEF agenda.
Okay.
every time I hear we only got 10 seconds in. Every time I hear this, it's just the WEF wants a fresh coat of paint that makes it look like they're playing along with climate stuff. There's no mechanism that forces anyone to play along. It's soft encouragement only. It's, there isn't even a real point system for the people who do play along.
There's talking points. There's talking points from what nation leaders and whatnot can observe and cite facts and draw.
What's more likely is that they are teaching the people who are running the businesses and everything else what to say to make it look like they're playing along, rather than what to do to actually do what's responsible. It's almost like that's what they're really doing, and whether they intend to do that or not, I can't really say. I can't say what's in their heart, but the WEF hasn't turned the corner on anything regarding the environment or the climate because it's not really trying to do that. They mention it a lot, but there's no social force involved at all. It's all about congratulating each other on the good job they did doing it so far, and that job was nothing at all. It was just talking about it. And then print pamphlets on what they're going to do for the next year. Their net zero is not a thing that the WEF has done. They'll talk about following through, but there is no follow through. There is no.
Well, there's going to be a lot of goals outlined. There's going to be a lot of things. I mean,
the governments have to do
desirable.
That. Sure, yeah, right. But the governments of the respective nations are going to have policies in place that assist in getting that done.
But it's like what you were saying about the G7 and the photo opportunity. This sort of thing kind of demonstrates where there could be fertile ground for those discussions, those negotiations, those plans or opportunities, whatever it is, right? Like that's as far as they're going to get with it, right? So they're going to talk about net zero, and the ones that talk loudest about it are going to be probably the first approached by the people who actually have any capability to bring about those changes.
Sure. But how many of the companies that really need to change, and I could list them, right? I mean, it's ExxonMobil. In fact, included in ExxonMobil is all the other big time oil companies, right? Chevron, Husky, Shell, on down the line, all of those. It's all the chemical manufacturing outfits, right? Like Dow Chemical, big one, right? DuPont, all of these, all the mining companies, because most of the mining processes include open pits of industrial waste mixed with water that gets kind of stirred around, and when that leaks into riverways, that's what poisons the rivers. That's the thing that's the big thing that we need in mining outfits to not do. So
I'm thinking more like like
how many of those have moved their needle internally because of what the WEF has done, and encouraged them to do, right?
Oh, so like in regards to what she's suggesting.
Yeah, she's suggesting that this is an evil scheme to implement all these things, when in actual fact it's more like a mustache twirling.
Well, she hasn't said it's evil yet. I want to hear her say that.
Well, she'll never use the term evil. She'll use the word communist, though, which she has already, right?
But
which to her is synonymous with evil.
I'm interested to see if by the end of the video she actually has some sort of speculation about what. I mean, you've seen the video. I haven't. So this is all new for me.
Sure. Well, we'll carry on.
And that means that the government can steal your natural resources.
Okay. 3 seconds later. The government can steal.
Here's the real deal. The government could always steal your resources.
Yeah.
If the people need the resources, they can always get it. Like in a time, if there's a war, this was a thing that happened in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
In the nation that brags about being the most free nation, guess what happened? People were conscripted.
Mm-hmm.
Factories were told that you're not going to make whatever you're making. You're going to make these other things for the military instead. You know, Chevrolet, we don't need these automobiles you're making. We need tanks instead. So you're going to retool your factory to manufacture these tanks. And no, you don't get a choice.
Yeah, when it's no longer business as usual.
Right. This is a government order. You're going to do it. That's when the nation needs it. Yes, the resources and the things that were built in that nation, they will be expected to play along. That's how it goes. And you always can. The government always has ways to do this. They don't always do it all the time, because doing it all the time is, first of all, very unpopular, and there's still, most of these nations we're talking about are democratic, and they have to pay attention to unpopular things. But if they need to bulldoze some houses down in order to build a hyperspace bypass to get the people from one area to another faster, they'll use their laws to do it. They'll say, okay, we are paying fair market value for these homes now. You have 6 months to move, and you have to, because we are tearing it down.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Move somewhere else. And they'll do it. They've done it before, they'll do it again. And it can seem, to the person who has to give up their home, it can seem like an egregious authoritarian thing. But in the end, it'll be a SkyTrain that goes in, or whatever. You know what I mean? It'll be a public transport system. It'll be
something for the greater good.
Something for the greater good. Right. So, and they're because we have a democracy, because we have people who put feedback into the system, they are obligated then to do it in a way that disrupts the least number of people and still does it in some kind of efficient way.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're watching them, and they only do it because we're watching them, by the way. The government would do all this stuff in a less efficient way and line their own pockets if we weren't continually eyeballs on them.
Yeah, and voting them in and out of power.
And voting them in and out, and having, journalists who dig in deep to get the information to put in newspapers to show what they're really doing when they try to hide stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all part of the process too. But yeah, the government could always take your stuff. But they don't, because we'd vote them out. That's why we need democracy. Anyway.
So here in the UK, the government can just randomly say, you know what? We're taking the North Sea oil and we're choosing not to drill there. Rather, we're going to import more expensive oil and gas from Norway in the same region. But guess what? We get to show lower carbon emissions. We get to obtain our goal of net zero. Because fossil fuels are dirty, fossil fuels are bad. So now suddenly you have a government, right, planning your entire energy policy.
So this is escalated from some things might change to their planning the entire thing, right? The language here escalates. It was some influence to a centrally planned thing to their planning the entire energy sector. Like the escalation of the the imagined plan in her narrative, she's walked this up, right? Did that come across to you when I pointed out just now that she's sort of walked this up to their planning the entire thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they're not. The government does have some control over mineral rights, and companies, they'll demand that the company has a plan that's got to meet certain, environmental standards or whatever regulations they have. And if they don't meet them, they might cancel a project, or they might, deny them that mineral rights because it's a thing that could endanger, the environment or the people or whatever it is. But yeah, they're not really not drilling it because of net zero. Because even like using the natural gas resources still is a thing that prevents you from getting to net zero. It still counts against you, right? It's not. That's factored in. You can't just have someone else drill it and then you buy it and then you get to take that off your ledger. You know what I mean? You still count it as your carbon emissions when you buy the hydrocarbon and then you burn it.
Well, there's also like credit exchange systems and stuff like that. But
yeah, it gets more complicated. Right. But what she's claiming is that someone else is going to make all that money from the drilling it and the providing it, and you're going to be just the sucker that has to pay for it all, so that politician can say, "Yay, net zero."
There's always some trade-off. She's just only pointing at one side of the coin.
Yeah, right. Here we go.
Industrial policy. According to ideology, not according to economic growth. That is central planning. All the rules and regulations around, net zero. You should have heat pumps. You must drive an EV. Combustion engine sales will end shortly. All of these things, the red tape that has just strangled business. This is all coming from this WEF agenda of central planning.
So this is really escalated. This is the WEF agenda of central planning. She's repeated this point several times, which, I will give her that this is effective communication of the idea, but it's not communist. It's not even close to communist.
No, it's just she's describing the standard practice in the most insinuating way.
Yeah, and then mentioning central planning as closely and as often as possible to it, so that everyone gets the, it is communist. No, I see it now.
Well, it's even worse when it's the global elites doing the central planning.
Yeah,
right? It's
because who knows what their agenda is, right?
Yeah.
They have an agenda. They have a plan that doesn't include your benefit.
Yeah. How dare all these countries collaborate?
Well, it's not the countries collaborating. It's the global elites that are collaborating.
Right.
That's also a central part of her narrative here.
Yeah.
Carrying on.
The control of a country's natural resources, production, distribution, and then lastly, and this is really insidious, demographics. Because, you have the whole DEI movement and the concept of open borders.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay.
This is really circling back to, she's really dragging in all the hits. You know what I mean? She's really, if you're concerned, she's manufacturing a lot of economic concerns, and then she's factoring those in with DEI and open borders, meaning immigration, right? These are all the exact talking points from from Trumpism. This is all the talking points from Trumpism. This is.
I was just gonna say, this is the part of the show where the people that some of her discussion was maybe a little inaccessible, probably a few MAGA hats flew off the heads as their heads snapped. And what'd she say? Open borders?
Yeah, open borders. Oh,
I'm polishing my pitchfork.
Yeah. Well, we better carry on here.
All right.
And so that's terrifying. And then how is it that they are able, this group of people in Davos, how are they able to make, say, Keir Starmer or someone else listen to them?
I just want to point out again how not useful he is about asking any clarifying questions, This is clearly, he knows where the conversation's going, and he's queuing her up for the next part of this. So, carrying on.
Fear-mongering wins you votes when you say that there's a climate catastrophe.
How much of this has been fear-mongering about communism up to this point in the conversation? Yeah.
There's nothing more precious
drumbeat
than people talking about fear when it's just like all they spew is their message of fear.
It's been a constant drumbeat of central planning and collectivist, warm collectivism and communism and evil Mamdani. She didn't say evil, but I mean she meant it. It was clear in her voice. The Mamdani factor, and he's somehow with the WEF, even though he's not really. No. And it's all been that, and now it's like, yeah, but they're also trying to make you afraid because fear will make you do things. And this pivot here is the thing that I got most angry with. Like the hypocrisy of fear mongering the entire way up to now. It's been 5 minutes of this so far. And then to say, and then they're also trying to make you afraid as possible. And that's very, very bad. Like, you've just been trying to make everyone as afraid as possible. That's all you've been doing up to this point. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Right. The world is going to end. The world is on fire. Right. People sit up and listen. There's like this extreme, unfairness in society, inequality. Look, the system's rigged against you. You're struggling because capitalism doesn't work. It's not working. The government has to intervene more. We can fix this. We can balance society. We can have equity in society. Again, when you listen to it, the intentions sound good, right? So it's like, oh, okay, more fairness, a cleaner planet. But then, and for myself, and I'll tell my story in a bit, I pulled back the curtain and you've realized these are all lies just to sell a product or service.
So this video doesn't include her backstory. She says that she's going to get to her backstory. That's on a different video or something. This conversation must have been much longer, but this was just the clip that I saw. I did read just a very brief thing about her backstory. She is a whistleblower about the WEF, but it's not related to how communist they were. It was about that they weren't really following through on companies and this sort of thing weren't really following through on commitments or whatever it was that was happening. And no one was checking and it was all fake. And she's right. It's all fake because the WEF, it's not really making anyone do anything. It's not holding anyone's feet to the fire. It's soft encouragement only. It is sort of all fake. Maybe they're good. Maybe they have some kind of good intent and the soft encouragement will just be continual reminders until they get to more solidified things. I don't know. Maybe they're really slow playing this whole thing. But I think it's more likely that they are just as happy with the appearance of being good so that they can sell more of their products. If Reebok can say our shoes weren't made in sweatshops with the wink that the other shoes are made in sweatshops, then maybe they sell 10% more shoes, right? And the people who buy them feel somewhat better about themselves because at least these shoes weren't made in sweatshops or whatever, right? Like, and that's the whole point. And if they don't need to prove ever that they're not really made in sweatshops, maybe they are made in sweatshops and just no one ever checks, right? They just said that as a marketing campaign thing, right? Then they get the benefit of selling more shoes, but they also get the benefit of having the cheaper labor from the sweatshops. And that's kind of what she was calling them out on, them being fake in that way, not being fake in the way she's saying, here, but in some other way. She was a whistleblower several years before. So this is disingenuous, but it also is saying, yes, it is sort of all fake. There is just a veneer of care for the environment and the climate and the rules and all these sorts of things. Because what these business people who show up at Davos really want is just more money. They just want more business. They just want more products sold, and they just want, access to cheaper raw materials for the things that they're making. And so it is fake, but she's spinning it to mean a different thing. She's just reinterpreting what's there to mean a different story. But carrying on.
Or win a vote. And so, look, Keir Starmer has always been left wing, right? But even some people that started out rather central cotton on that, this climate and DEI sells to the public. And particularly, it grabbed hold of society and went mainstream after the great financial crisis and after COVID. Businesses felt they needed a rebranding. They needed to cast themselves as social do-gooders.
And she's perfectly right about that. That is what businesses were doing, and that's a lot of the thing that the WF encourages them to do. Rebrand yourself, get the messaging out, do the marketing for the environmental thing, the fair trade coffee and the cleaner processes, and we're not doing bad things.
Reinforce the culture.
Yeah, except that there's no mechanism for actually making anyone really do anything. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just about marketing. So she's right about that it is just about this sort of fake thing. But it's not a fake thing that's disguising communism. It's a fake thing disguising capitalism.
Mm-hmm. It didn't seem to work, or did it? I mean, I was thinking of Bud Light. That's probably the most famous example, isn't it? I don't know if it actually, or maybe that's only in the States where people were actually sort of
go woke, go broke.
Yeah, and they went, and all the Disney movies and all of these things that seem to actually not do very well.
Yeah. So you mentioned Disney movies that seem to not actually do very well, and the one that always comes up, what they mention, is The Little Mermaid was remade in 2023. And the cartoon character was a person of a different color than it was the first time around, and so it didn't really do very well. So I looked it up real quick, and it seems to have done pretty okay. Production budget of $240 million, which is a lot, but it's Disney, so they got deep pockets. But then it grossed $569.6 million worldwide, well over double. That's sort of a movie term for its break even. Isn't that it grosses the production budget? It's considered a flop if it doesn't make twice what the production budget was.
Okay.
So over twice by a fair amount. I don't know. Not really a flop. Like this idea that, like, if you were only on Twitter and listening to the people complain about The Little Mermaid, you might think that was terrible.
Mm.
I don't know. I didn't watch it, but I also don't really care what the skin color is of the animated character that played the Little Mermaid. It just doesn't pay my bills. Sorry. But carrying on.
But I suppose maybe the Disney movies are a microcosm of what you're talking about on a global political scale. People have tried these things. Economically, they've actually been a disaster, but they've gone ahead anyway.
Not a disaster.
Due to ideology.
Yes. But remember something, like the pushback, right? The backlash against this whole woke movement only started a few years ago. And, it's obviously predominant in America. Most Americans voted for Donald Trump and Donald Trump's agenda against, right, the woke movement.
Yeah,
Both.
they wouldn't have voted for Trump here, not in a million years.
Well,
maybe now.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens, huh? We'll see. I mean, here you have Labor canceling council elections, so you can't really. There's no litmus test, just yet. But I do think that it's a terribly unpopular government here in Labor. But yes, there's no doubt that the UK, Europe, and Canada are still more left-wing. They're still buying into this hoax, as Donald Trump says, as President Trump says, that there's this climate crisis. There isn't.
There's the second one that really grabbed me. That the climate is a hoax, is a thing that Trump has said before. In fact, he went even so far as to say that it was a hoax perpetrated by China to negatively affect the U.S. economy. There's a lot of narratives attached to this to explain why it would be a hoax, right? It's or why it's not needed. As soon as you believe that the climate change isn't happening, you get to say that any measure you put in to work against climate change is making your company or your business inefficient in that respect and less competitive, and therefore not needed. But it's only not needed if it's not happening. So that's pretty convenient, right? That you have to imagine that it's not happening first. Yeah.
Right, because she's going to question the legitimacy of how the government comes to its policies about its natural resources or why it's developing this technology over that technology. You could hear her, the way she was referring to dirty coal or whatever, right? Like, she doesn't think it's dirty. She probably bathes in it. Who knows, right? Like,
yeah. Net zero is the dirty plan from the global elites to enact central planning over your nation's economies, and for the government to seize all your resources. Yeah. Well, we'll carry on. There's a little bit more on this.
There's no climate crisis. There is climate change.
I just want to rewind that just a little bit there. Play that together for you here.
They're still more left-wing. They're still buying into this hoax, as Donald Trump says, as President Trump says, that there's this climate crisis. There isn't. There is no climate crisis. There is climate change.
Put those two things side by side for yourself, Patrick. What you just said there. There is no climate crisis.
Mm-hmm.
There is climate change.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of those two right next to each other? Do they make sense? Do they how do they mesh in your mind? Is it confusing?
Well, I mean, they're not congruent. I don't like climate. There is climate change. So she's trying to downgrade to say that the climate change should have never been considered a crisis.
Well, let's see if she says anything else on the topic. Let's play on.
It is true that global temperatures have gone up a bit, but
a bit
for an entire planet. Yeah,
a little bit. Just global temperatures, they've gone up a bit.
Remember, right? In some areas, that's caused, hardship, and in some areas, that's created more life.
So this is another common thing that's said among people who want to downplay climate change, is that carbon either isn't a problem, or it's better than that. It's a boon to the world. It is true that if the percentage of carbon is the only thing that changes. Plants that breathe carbon, which is nearly every plant, they grow better. If only that were the only thing that changed, then having a few tenths of a percent more carbon would be an undeniable better thing. Except that it's not the only thing that changes. The temperature also changes. Mm-hmm. And this is changing so many other things, and very, very rapidly. And the rapid part is the part that's going to really, really be a problem. So people will say that more carbon is a benefit, but only if you're taking out other ancillary effects of having that carbon be in place, like more heat energy that's trapped, a higher temperature. Once rainfall patterns change enough in a region that the plant life there is no longer supported, because plants need more than just carbon. They also need water and sunlight, and the right temperature. They need enough nutrients in the soil, and the nutrients are created by bacteria in the soil.
And so once you don't an ecosystem where all of the creatures that take place in that habitat.
Well, yeah, there's also biodiversity, right. Yeah. But just take water alone. Once less water falls in an area that used to have enough water, it has, say, a large number of trees, because it used to have water that fell from the sky regularly, enough to feed the soil, enough to have all these trees. Once you have less water than that over several years, all those trees now become essentially more of a liability than a boon. They start to die. Dead trees don't pull any carbon in anymore. They don't get a benefit from having more carbon in the atmosphere. In fact, they're more likely to burn and give off all their carbon and make the problem worse. Mm-hmm. And if it gets even worse than that, if it warms up too much, then the soil can get reduced bacteria count. And once it does that, it's much more difficult for plants to thrive in that soil, because there's less nutrients there to use to grow, because plants need more than just carbon and sunlight and even water. It also needs the nutrients from the soil. So, and that's the thing that's predicted to become what is on the climate model for the future now, which is called the Dust Bowl. They think that roughly the interior of North America, from somewhere, the area west of the Mississippi and east of the Rocky Mountains and north of, somewhere around, the middle of Texas or so, and south of, they think probably, roughly the, middle of the Canadian provinces, roughly the, 53rd or so parallel. That area, that entire area, could have all of its rivers dry up or deplete enough that they are not giving water to anything, and the soil just slowly turns to dust, and the plant life dies off, and you can't farm there, and you get what they refer to as the Dust Bowl. There is an area that's kind of like this near Oklahoma now that they call it kind of the Dust Bowl. There's been times when it didn't get enough water, and it just sort of couldn't sustain farms there, which is a big problem in the 30s, which was a thing that certainly didn't help the Depression. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when you get enough of a drought, it tips the thing over, and the life that you think is going to get a boon gets a bust instead. Because, yeah, one thing that lets all the bacteria live in there is water. And another thing that lets it live all there is shade from all the plants that are growing above it in a biodiversity situation. They the bacteria will rely on the plants growing to provide shade so that it doesn't get too hot in the soil to burn it out. If it's hot summer and you cut your grass too short, the sun will start to burn out the roots of the grass and it will start to die. That's a thing that happens.
All this to say, like, she basically has a pretty myopic view of the whole situation. She's just looking at one thing and saying, "Oh,
one thing, it'll be a bad for some areas and good for others." Well, okay, but if the total situation is bad, and by the way, having an area the size of Europe in the middle of North America turn into a dust bowl would be fucking catastrophic. Yeah.
She's not bringing any evidence to bear either. She's just like trying to patiently.
That's the thing that I was going for in this whole thing. Throughout this whole thing, she provides no evidence of anything. There's no substance really to what she's saying. It's fear mongering about communism.
With all this production value of his podcast.
Well,
they put all their money into set. They had nothing left for the researchers.
It's their podcast that this conversation they're having now is just like the WEF. Yeah. It's no substance. It's all veneer. So anyway, we should let her finish.
All right.
Right. And the way that we, how do we deal with a crisis? Do we deal with a crisis if, right, your lights go out, right? If you're broke? No, you deal with it through adaptation. So you need to grow your economy. You need to, have a vibrant capital markets. You need to have funding for innovation. And if things get bad, you're now in a position to deal with it. But right now, this left-wing movement, what they're doing is they're strangling the economy. We see that here. Your economy here in the UK is flatlining. Europe is shot. I mean, the worst example is Germany. I mean, it's pretty much 3 years of like shrinkage. And when we look at innovation today, remember something, compute is easy. Everyone talks about AI and quantum computing. The challenging bit is the energy part, right? There is no technology without abundant, affordable, and reliable energy.
So a couple things there. Imagine mentioning the terrible recent downturn in the economy in Britain without mentioning Brexit.
No, she's got no context.
Number one reason, yeah. Also,
the other thing too is if it's centrally planned, it's like some cabal or something. How come it's just one country? It's like, oh, it's your turn for the downturn. Right.
Well, I mean, she mentioned several, right? She mentioned Germany has had a setback recently.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's all she mentions. It's like Germany. Right. It's like, oh, I thought you said all of this was centrally planned. So don't you think it would be centrally administered?
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I have to say, is that I loved the dramatic zoom in where she's like, put a stranglehold. I was just like, oh fuck, I'm inches from her face. Gross.
So she mentioned that there is no crisis, but then she also mentioned how you would solve the crisis. Why would she need a solution for the crisis that she says isn't in existence?
Yeah.
Also confusing. But of course, the thing she lists as a solution is the opposite of a solution to this particular crisis. To her, the solution is let her buck. Do all the things. The economy needs to get stoked up and roaring as much as possible. How much you want to bet that we eventually find out that she's funded by an oil think tank that wants to encourage petroleum use? Like the Koch brothers have a couple of these, I think, where they pay people to talk about this sort of thing in public. How much you want to bet we eventually find this out about her?
Who knows? But I thought it was funny, like just looking back at the beginning of the video, because he refers, as he's introducing her, he says she's a whistleblower. It's like, it doesn't sound like she was inside or part of anything. She's just watching the same TV stream we are of these proceedings. And then it's like, so you can't blow a whistle from the outside. You have to blow a whistle from the inside because you saw something no one else saw and you have the goods, right?
Yeah. So one thing I want to just put on the screen here for anyone who's on YouTube watching, and we'll just kind of describe what's happening here. This is a graph of global warming from 1850 to 2023. Why don't you just kind of quickly describe what's going on with that graph there, Patrick?
Steady upward trend.
Very, very steady, especially from roughly the mid 1970s. That's the point that it takes a sharp upward trajectory and been on the same sort of trajectory ever since. It's also noted that this is 5 different individual measurements, and these 5 measurements have different methods of looking at the historical data. There are differences between them, less so since climate science as a science started sometime around, you can tell, right around late 40s, early 50s kind of time frame. This is when all these measurements sort of tighten up and become nearly identical, because they've begun tracking it in real time rather than trying to look backward at it from records. So before that point, there's a little more discrepancy, but even in the discrepancy, they track each other. They're very close. Yeah, it is a problem that it's getting hotter, but it's also a problem that it's getting hotter more quickly. It's getting hotter more quickly. Yeah. For people who want to ignore this, you need to look at it. And anyone who you find anyone who wants to ignore it, just don't sneer at them, don't mock them, but just make them look at the data. This one graph, just one graph. It doesn't tell everything about the story of how we got here, but it's really inconvenient to look at this and try to say to yourself, there's no problem here. This is that it's only a little bit or something. Yeah. I think that's, yeah. Anyway, we're not totally screwed, but what we're seeing is that there will be some economic and social consequences for what's happening here. And this graph tells us something about the magnitude of those future consequences. The higher that gets, the greater the magnitude. There's no other way around it. So anyway, we've yammered on for long enough. I think we'll probably pack this in now.
All right. Well, that was way too long to be looking at her, but that was a good discussion.
Yeah. Well, I had to do it. It pissed me off. Sorry.
It's all right. I'm here for it.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Anyway, again, if anyone has any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, or they see another video that they'd like us to do the anatomy of a grift on, we'll try to do it shorter, maybe take some individual clips instead of the whole thing, or maybe do it in a planned fashion and not just let us go freewheel on this so it just goes forever. Send that to truthandrestricted@gmail.com. And yeah, if you have any other thing you want to bother me on something, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer G. Watson. And yeah, with that, I guess we'll sign off, Patrick.
All right. Well, have a good night.
Until next time.